Hello, today is Tuesday, September 17th, and we're here with another episode of the news.
There's something weird in the air, and none of us can breathe.
I don't think it's what's in the air. I think it's what's not in the air, which is
Moisture?
a drop of moisture.
There's no moisture, and it's also extremely hot out. So I guess it's not as humid, which is an improvement for this area of the country, but
But it's so not humid that it's uncomfortable.
yeah.
As they say, it's a dry heat. Speaking of heat, guess who's getting some heat? It's the big tech companies. And they're feeling it. How do we know that they're feeling it? It's not what they say. No, it's what they're doing. What they're begging for, which seems counterintuitive, right?
51 tech CEOs send an open letter to Congress asking for a federal data privacy law. Like, without even getting into what the article's about, let's just imagine for a second what sort of twisted and nefarious purpose there might be in making such a request.
Well, I think the headline should read that 51 tech CEOs sent an open letter to Congress asking for their lobbyists to write a data privacy law.
I didn't even get like one paragraph into the article, and I was like, this is just so they can like write fake legislation for this, right? Like that's what that really is, and yes, that's probably what they're asking for.
Now, their argument is we're getting this patchwork of laws, meaning California has our balls in a vice. We need to supersede that. We need an Ajit pie just for us, just for the big tech companies, not to do necessarily with communication.
A man of the people,
I
but
like,
not really a man of the people.
I like how all of these companies are like, look, we need nth degree surveillance on all of our customers or we can't do business. Like, it doesn't even enter into their mind to just not collect the data. Like, you don't need that much data to do business with somebody. Remember when somebody could just walk into a store and buy stuff with cash?
The Dark Ages?
It's unheard of now.
Don't you know that cash is only used by terrorists?
So it would seem.
So, yeah, all the big companies, and they collectively are feeling the heat, and individually, they're at different levels of siege, I guess you could say. And maybe at the top of the list is poor little Amazon.
Poor little Amazon.
Because the president hates it. And so you can go after it without worrying about any angry tweets coming against you.
Amazon is probed by U.S. antitrust officials over the Amazon marketplace. The FTC is looking into this, so I expect a toothless response.
Well, there'll be a fine of somewhere around $200 million, which to Amazon is like, their snack budget.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is like the negotiator for Amazon just comes to the FTC and it's like, look, whatever you guys are looking into, I'm going to save you guys a whole bunch of money. Don't even bother looking into it. We'll just cut you a check right now for $250 million.
We're going to sign you guys up to what we call fine payment prime. All right? You're going to get your fine payments in under 24 hours. Drone delivered in a duffel bag and unmarked bills.
Man, if that's all the FTC wants, I mean, why not just streamline it?
So specifically what they're going after here, though, is the destruction of small business. So they're going to the Amazon sellers, and they're saying, okay, explain to us what Amazon has said to you about, like, you have to follow our rules or you'll be destroyed. Or do you think there's real competition? Because Amazon kind of says, hey, look at Walmart and eBay. We have real competition. And the FTC's like, doubt. So they're asking the sellers, do you believe that you have an alternative, or do you believe that if you don't play ball, you're out and you're done?
Our competition, Amazon's competition on eBay is used toothbrushes.
There was some of the interviews were listed here. Are people who had been interviewed, and they were like, yeah, I can't remember. One of the guys said that like if he hadn't advertised with Amazon, like his products were being delisted or moved further down, and it was like, oh.
Oh yeah, they got in trouble for that. This is something different.
But the guy mentioned it in the article who was interviewed for this sort of thing.
The old Google gambit.
Yeah.
They learn from each other. Can't say that they don't. Also up on the investigative block is Apple. And it's for something that I'd never thought the government would actually do anything about. And maybe they still won't, but it's nice to see something, I guess.
This makes a lot more sense now. Motherboard's reporting Congress is investigating Apple's repair monopoly. Part of the antitrust investigation centers on Apple's restrictions on third-party repairs. Now, remember, what was it last week that we reported on? Apple all of a sudden was like, look, we're going to sell our repair parts. There's this magical thing happening. And almost like immediately, like somebody got a call from somebody in Congress and was like, we're going to investigate you. And they're like, oh, I'm so glad you called. We had this thing in motion for months. And it's like,
They also made a very unexpected announcement at the Apple event relating to warranty, which we'll talk about in the next episode in the business
There's
section.
a lot of Apple news this week.
But all related, I'm sure.
yeah.
All very big decisions that were made very quickly based on this probe.
This isn't the first time that Apple has made a huge decision like this, seemingly just for outside forces. They're like, we're not going to do this unless outside forces force our hand, but we're going to be ready to do it immediately, like as if we've been preparing for months to do the right thing anyway, but we're only going to do the right thing if absolutely cornered into doing the right thing. It's a weird
Right.
MO.
Machiavelli would be fully erect with that plan. It's kind of, it's brilliant. It's evil, but it's brilliant. And finally, perhaps the most obvious reason that this letter was sent saying, hey, you need to do something about these stupid states is the news about Google, who has so many little red dots all over them that they're actually starting to sweat.
Nearly every state is launching an antitrust investigation of Google. Attorneys general from 50 states, as well as Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., oh man, have announced their plan to launch an antitrust investigation focused on Google. All 50 states?
Well, there's two.
Yeah, but
California.
Well, it says 50 states, but then it leaves out.
That's like all of them.
The two that didn't were California and Alabama. And I was like, ooh, Alabama taking the heat for Kentucky again.
Yeah. Yeah, Alabama. I don't know what Alabama's thinking, but it can't be, if we're not counting Puerto Rico and D.C., it can't be 50 states if you leave two out, right? I mean,
I guess 50 attorneys general, so 48 plus, that's a little bit of a typo.
Yeah, I
that's-
don't.
oh, okay, yeah.
It's strange, but
BuzzFeed.
Either
What's
way.
BuzzFeed?
Yeah. I really I want to think that these attorneys general have the tools to look at this and actually think about the antitrust aspects of this, but I think they just want the money.
Well, I imagine about,
they saw what the European Union's doing. And they're like, I want a piece of that.
I'd say around 40 of them, just, somebody called them up and was like, hey, we're going to go and get money from Google. And they're like, yeah, put me on that list. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I hate to be that cynical. I mean, normally, we're pretty cynical on this, but it seems very thinly veiled.
This is the same argument as Amazon. Basically, it's the ads and the search, the way all that works, the way you have to pay to play. And they're saying that, hey, when I search for something, I shouldn't have to be lost in this mess of ads and be confused about what the actual top result is and blah, blah, blah. It's the same
Google's
old
just
argument.
good at selling ads and search. Are you going to find them for that?
Yeah.
They're going to try.
Literally are. All right. In other Google news, we know that Google kind of switched to a very social justice-y kind of internal policy. And what they figured out from that is that those people love to complain. They really, really love to complain. So we had a litany from the pregnant women to the Chinese sympathizers to the Republicans to the Democrats. Everybody was like, Google discriminates. And Google said, hey, why don't we just stop talking about politics? Why don't you just do your work, peons? And turns out that's not allowed.
Now, this is a Wall Street Journal article, so I'm surprised it's not paywalled, but the
It
headline...
was for me.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, the headline says, the government has ordered Google to let employees speak out. So this is, it's not, Google is not allowed to, the labor board says that Google is not allowed to interfere with those kinds of things.
Political, which in the modern day, everything is political, right?
Yeah.
So it covers any kind of bitching. This has to do with they have all these internal message boards and stuff like that, and they have those weekly meetings or whatever, and you have to be able to voice whatever your opinion is in those meetings. So, and no retaliation, which that one guy, Demore, was that his name?
Yeah.
He's probably like,
They settled.
we're gonna do this now.
I think his case is probably not as strong as some of the other ones that we've covered. There were a couple people that, the pregnancy one, and there was the other person that was trying to organize They were trying to organize some kind of something internally, and they were dismissed for nebulous reasons. I think they've probably got a better case.
Meanwhile, overseas, the EU are old hands at taking little chunks out of big tech companies. They're really good at just extracting money whenever they want it. And doesn't look like it's going to stop. Traditionally, they've used Ireland. Google has used Ireland as a shield to hold up against all the other countries. But France says, no, that's not going to work anymore.
Google is going to pay $1 billion to France to settle a fiscal fraud probe. And it is totally just the tax haven, tax shelter thing. So this is really not a fine so much as what Google or what France figured that Google owed in back taxes for a number of years.
The Irish gambit is not going to work. Sorry.
The EU member states, that actually would be a really good strategy that Google could use to turn the EU in on itself. It's like if Google is to be taxed on profits made from activity originating from a particular country's citizens, then that profit probably is in proportion to the strength of that country's economy and some other factors. And so Google could just do it that way. And then if Google proposed that, I bet the EU member states would just turn on themselves.
Again, Machiavelli would be proud of that. Yes. Make our enemies fight one another. Switching over to some Huawei news, we haven't heard too much about Huawei in the recent past. I mean, we've heard a lot about them, but it's been kind of cooled down.
We've had like one story a week, but it's not like doom and gloom. It's just little things.
So the newest Huawei news has to do with the old, someone comes over here from China for intellectual reasons and steals some technology story. A tale as old as time. And it's happened again, this time from Texas.
Reuters actually has a fairly detailed article. The headline is, U.S. charges Chinese professor in the latest shot at Huawei. The weird thing about this case, the Chinese professor is a visiting professor in Texas, but this court case is happening in New York with the other Huawei case. So the professor's going to have to go to New York to deal with this. But basically, as a professor, he reached out to several different technology companies, and this is not the first time this happened. The first time this happened was with another company called Connex, or CNEX, and he basically said, "Hey, I'm a professor. I want to use your technology for a project. Can you do that?" And being a company, you're like, "Yeah, that sounds great. Here's our technology." And then he phoned up his friends at Huawei and was like, "Here, look at this awesome technology." Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Phoned up his friends at no, well, actually, that's the first case. Where I don't think that's I think they just settled. But weirdly, it was like Huawei and Connex, and they didn't really involve the professor. And so then the professor did it again, and now the feds are like, whoa, wait, what? That's how that works?
That's balls of steel right there.
Yeah.
Or that's the Communist Party abducting one of his grandchildren. Who knows?
They would never do that.
Level 1, come for the tech stories, stay for the dark humor.
Speaking of Huawei, they are under the gun from the U.S. government, and it really is hurting their bottom line. I mean, they're limping along, but they can't use the App Store, and they sell Android phones. Think about that. That's crippling. So they're trying to think of new ways, like, okay, how can we deal with this? And they have a new proposal, which sounds kind of good at first, but as BBC points out, might not really solve the problem.
Huawei chief offers to share 5G know-how for a fee. It's like Huawei showed up. It's like looking around at the rest of the world, and companies like, hey, you guys are having trouble rolling out your next-gen wireless network. Guess what we at Huawei have already figured out? Would you like some help?
For a fee.
So they want to license everything with the agreement that, hey, we're going to license this to you. If you want to go through it and look for the Chinese government and change it, that's totally fine. You can totally do that. But the argument that the BBC points out is like, well, yeah, but if any of that data goes back through Huawei in any way, how can we be sure that the Chinese government doesn't get a copy of it?
I would also point to the gas line explosion that was in Russia. It's like some gas pipeline valve control software company in the 70s supplied control software to Russia, and they got to look at it and they couldn't figure out what the problem was, and it caused one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history because gas pipelines.
Remember LinkedIn?
Unfortunately.
LinkedIn was angry. And why were they angry? Because they put public data on a website, and someone had the audacity of making a copy of it. And they said that that's illegal. And it went to court, and it
We
went
reported
to
on that.
appeals courts, and it's been going and going and going.
Like 4 years.
Yeah, just forever. But finally, it's maybe settled.
Court rules that scraping public website data is not hacking. And the important distinction here is even in the website's terms of service, it says no. Aaron Schwartz would be like freaking out right now. Yeah. Because, yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like if you put up a billboard and
No pictures of this billboard.
yeah, no pictures, no
Not
paintings. You can't copy what the words are on it and show anybody else, which is stupid.
Can somebody make sure the federal attorneys general get a copy of this ruling? Because
Well, that's the thing. They point out that this Computer Fraud and Abuse Act will be very heavily affected by this decision if it stands.
yeah,
Because there's a lot of things that the government can nab you for, and it's like, that's hacking. But no, it's not. It's copying.
I mean, like downloading a bunch of academic journals just because the terms of service say don't do that. That it's not actually it's actually okay.
Well, that's copyright. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
They're not going to overturn that. Sorry. Bill de Blasio, the despotic leader of New York, wants to be president. And he's got some ideas about things that he wants to do when he's president. And one of them is insane.
Presidential hopeful Bill de Blasio wants a tax on robots. I'll save you the trouble of reading this article. The tax on robots is going to be equivalent to 5 years worth of payroll taxes when they roll out robots to replace a human being. The more I read of what Bill de Blasio said, the more I fear for the future of humanity.
Oh.
You knocked over a water bottle.
I knocked over my water bottle.
A level 1 water bottle from the store at store.level1
I needed sugar and caffeine today, so we're having the Coke.
You hid your water shamefully because you had the choice.
I did.
You could have been a hydro homie, although that's not the real word.
No, it's hydro homies.
No, it's not.
We're both rocking the Verdes.
So, spying, international spying, it's a thing that happens. It's kind of something that all the countries do, but they kind of ignore
They pretend they don't.
for diplomacy reasons. But Trump has never been a man to ignore it. He gets really upset when he gets spied upon, which is why this is a little peculiar, because he didn't get upset at all, at least publicly.
Israel allegedly installed Stingray devices around D.C. to spy on President Trump. I would also remember the conspiracy story about Jeff Bezos and his private investigator, and all. That's all I could think about while I was reading this. So, I think actually we reported on news like there are a bunch of people that are just on like the IT underground thing in DC, and there were a couple stories like a year ago about all these mysterious Stingray towers all around DC, and it was like, what's going on with this? I don't know. We'll probably read more about it.
But we didn't know who it was.
Yeah, had no idea. Well, now we know.
Now, this is not official, but Gizmodo claims that they have a lot of sources, insiders, who are like, yeah, this is pretty much definitely Israel. But no one talks about that.
That's scary.
I don't know.
That's two data points that point to the same thing. Krista doesn't care.
Now, if
So I didn't mean to yawn. I'm just so tired.
if this had been China or Russia, do you think they would have said something?
Yeah, I think they'd be freaking out.
No, we're best friends with them.
No, like it's like they're hacking our voting machines through the Stingray tower. Like, how do you even
That's
buy
what
that?
best friends do.
Like, do you bring it on a boat? How did that get through the?
Do you, if it's Saudi Arabia, do you think we would have said something?
Well, it's a tough one.
You know, our state just joined the list of states where you cannot boycott Israel.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Red state governors. Gotta love them. Oh, man, the vapors.
Oh,
They are an outspoken bunch. Now, we have this vaping epidemic going on in the country, and the headlines are just going crazy. I mean, what the number's up to like, what, 600?
Yeah. I vaped formaldehyde and got sick. Down with vaping.
And,
I think it was 500 at least in this article.
but 500 out of how many? This is a vanishingly small percentage
Listen,
of
it's
vapors.
important that we make this seem worse than it is, right?
I'm sure that there are over 20,000 vapors in the local university scene.
Yeah, just like the entire student body. Well, vaping it's getting a bad rap. The mainstream media has decided that vaping is evil, and they are doubling down on those headlines. And it seems like the powers that be see blood in the water, and so they've come out to attack the big fish.
Juul illegally marketed e-cigarettes, the FDA says. Now, before you post the angry comments there, I'm not saying that. That's what the FDA said, according to the New York Times.
Oh, they're already talking.
The FDA. It's the FDA.
They paused the video 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
No. So, yeah, Juul was marketing it to kids. It turns out this is not a repeat of 1952, where they were using...
No, this was different.
Yeah.
They marked it as because they said that they were safer than regular cigarettes.
They used the word switch, right? And so the argument here is switch is not the same as quit. You can tell people to quit smoking, but you can't tell them to switch over to your nicotine product as a substitute for safer than smoking, because it's not been proven by the FDA that vaping is safer than smoking. I mean, vaping has killed 500 people. We can prove it. How many can we prove that cigarettes have killed 500 people?
I think we can.
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe 5 million, maybe 50 million.
Listen, this is Juul's much bigger fish. Oh, jeez, got so many ads.
Well, I mean, Juul's not a bigger fish, but
No,
I think Philip Morris has all those lobbyists.
I think we truly are entering the world of 1984 when logical conclusions are outlined. It's like, if A, then B. It's like, no, you must not. Deductive reasoning is not allowed.
That's a logical jump. We're better than that. California, they're at the forefront of the big anti-tech push, or I guess you could say the pro-tech worker push. Depends on glass half empty kind of thing. But when it comes to app-based companies, and when we are talking about app-based companies, we're talking about Uber and all the food delivery companies and anything where you pay through your phone, and it's like the gig economy. California's very serious about that, and they've made a landmark decision.
California bill makes app-based companies treat workers as employees. So if your Uber driver is using the Uber app, they're an Uber employee. This
I was
seems like
surprised.
it seems like it'd be problematic for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, it's problematic because some of these companies are going to go away.
Yeah.
They can't afford to do business like this.
Well, what about like plumbers? There was I had a plumber out a few months ago, and they did everything through like their phone and an iPad. So like they had an app and they signed up for the app, and it was all them. Like they got a lead online and they filled it out and they did everything. But it was like they were like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this job and I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to estimate it. I'm going to do all this stuff, and it was through an app. But the dude was definitely, a sole proprietor of his own plumbing shop business. It seems like in that scenario,
Did you find
that
them
doesn't count.
through the app though?
Yeah,
Oh.
well,
Then that-
online.
But that doesn't matter because he's paying his employees. He's using the app. The business is using the app rather than contractors, right?
I don't know. It seems
Now,
ambiguous.
if you were in a situation where you were an app company and you did the contracting with individual plumbers
Oh, so like if you pay the app,
to
Yeah.
do the work, yeah, I think that would.
I understand that.
I mean,
I'm paying the plumber directly.
It's a weird. I'm sure the bill, I'm sure it's like 5 million pages that lays all that out. But I think that would be the distinction, right?
That's yeah. I mean, it should be, but the way that this reads makes it sound like anybody receiving money through an app is like an employee automatically. It's like,
That doesn't sound right.
It does. Yeah. Where do you draw the line? I don't know. I'm sure that'll be tested very soon, and we'll find out. And that's another one of those reasons that that's the patchwork of state laws that the big tech companies are not fans of. They do not want it. And speaking of state laws, Maine is kind of a thorn in the paw of the FCC and the big phone companies and cable companies. And they're another, like a mini California, a very mini California. And so they came up with this rule that says you're not allowed, if you want one TV channel, you should be able to buy one TV channel. If all you want is Better Homes and Gardens, that's all you watch all day long, you should be able to just get that one channel.
It's going to cost you 38 cents.
And the big telecommunications companies, not fans.
Comcast is suing Maine to stop a local law, requiring the sale of individual TV channels. Industry suit says Maine law violates their First Amendment and Communications Act. Wow.
So the First Amendment is apparently, it's your freedom of speech to decide how to package your TV channels. I guess that kind of makes sense. I mean, in a way, you're forcing them to sell a certain kind of product a certain kind of way.
Certainly with the Sinclair broadcasting, like where everybody was saying in unison, that's somebody's First Amendment.
The problem here, as is always the problem with the big telecommunication companies, is that the relationship between them and the regulators is so incestuous that regulation seems wrong on the surface. It seems like, what, you're going to tell me that I have to sell channels in a certain way? Isn't this my business? But at the same time, they choke out all competition. Mm-hmm. So we're forced to live with them.
We got this janky public access mechanism, and it's just, no one would do that. Like the people that are on public access literally probably should be on some kind of medication for their mental health.
Well, I'm talking about just, like look at Netflix, for example, and how hard they went after Netflix to try and get all those, concessions about the data and stuff like that. So when a competitor comes in, they use their might and their lobbying power to destroy it. So maybe we do have to regulate them. It's such a weird situation.
It is very strange.
But I think per channel makes sense as a consumer.
Yeah.
I think Maine could probably put this in their franchising agreement, which the article mentions that as like as part of agreeing to exclusive franchise rights, you have to allow people to buy your channels as a one-off. That's a business deal. That probably would stand up.
And if it didn't, you'd get them out of your state.
Yeah.
But see, the lawmakers don't want that because that hurts them.
Because they don't get the donations?
Yeah.
That is scary.
And yet, unsurprising, as is every one of these stories.
It seems crazy that this was 2 years ago. Or no, it wasn't 2 years ago. How long ago was this?
It's been a while.
It has been a while.
Yeah, it was a while.
It was the swatting case where some idiots were playing Call of Duty and one of them said, "What's your address? I'm going to come and kill you or kick your ass or whatever." He said, "Oh, no, you won't. Here's my address." But he gave the wrong address, a fake address, except it was real. And when the cops showed up, they killed the unsuspecting people at that address, or one of them. So there were 3 people involved. They already convicted and sentenced the swatter, but the guy that gave the address, his case is just now wrapped up.
Ohio gamer sentenced to 15 months in prison for fatal swatting case. That seems excessive. The reason that his sentence was so harsh was because apparently at first he was going to try to cover it up, or he wasn't, like they were kind of in on it together at first or something.
The real question I had while reading this article was, what happened to the cops?
No.
Like,
2-week vacation.
yeah, who busted down a door and killed someone.
No, they didn't even have to bust down the door. The guy came out and was like, "What's happening?" And of course, they were shining 15 million watt lights in his eyes and he couldn't see. And I think they thought he had a gun or something, which would have been his right. It's his house. But yeah, there is a third guy. I'm not sure exactly what happened to him, who was even less involved in this whole thing. But yeah, it does seem extreme because this guy, in a lot of ways, was also a victim.
Yeah. Well, was this a form of self-defense, like giving a fake address?
Well, I mean, you could have just not engaged. There's definitely that argument.
Or is that 1v1 me?
And I think this does sort of send a message. It's like, hey, if someone asks for your address online to come and kill you, don't respond.
Yeah. But that's not good for clickbait.
We talked about the EU and how they love just taking big chunks out of the tech companies. Big, delicious chunks. The choicest cuts. And so they have the GDPR and they have all these people who are in charge of these things. And they had this woman who was just a bulldog when it came to going after the tech companies. And now some restructuring happened in the EU, and they were like, finally, we'll get rid of her. But wait.
EU reappoints the top antitrust cop who led the crackdown on tech giants. So, like, if you really enjoyed the Schadenfreude of all of the stories last year where Google got fined, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, I'm pretty sure that's going to be happening again.
The sequel.
Margrethe Vestager.
She's back.
It's probably Margaret, right? It's just an accent that you don't actually read.
Who cares?
She's going to be its antitrust chief for the newly restructured, what is it? It was the anti-competitive something or other. It's like the committee for the anti-competitive stuff. Not just Google, but all the technology stuff.
The tech vampires. Also out of the EU, or the UK in particular, which is still in the EU. Gosh, how long has it been now? And they have taken a hard stance on one of the most crippling, evil things in our world. Of all the problems that we have in this world, I'm so glad that our lawmakers are focusing on this, because it is a scourge.
Loot boxes in games are gambling and should be banned for kids, say UK MPs. Wow, they're a couple of years late here. Are things running really that slow in the UK? Like, has everything just ground to a halt that...
They do have other problems.
Or they just, they just need a slam dunk, like, look how hard I am on...
I mean, this is old news. I feel like this is related to Krista's handmade pottery mug.
It says, get wrecked, scrub.
I agree with them.
For a bachelorette.
I don't think they go far enough. I think we should ban children from gaming.
Children are not allowed on the internet.
This is one of the things that I agree with the Chinese government on. Keep the kids off the gaming. That's what we need to do.
You don't even play multiplayer games that often. Why does that bother you?
I just don't like kids.
They're better at me than this game.
That does drive me crazy.
Their young reflexes.
Yeah. Speaking of China, it's no secret that China is very specific about what you can say publicly. And they don't pretend otherwise. They say, listen, watch what you say. And if you say bad things about the Communist Party, you will disappear. And maybe your family will disappear. So don't do it. But the thing is, there's a lot of people in China, right? Billions of people.
At least 12 people.
And how do you make sure that all those people say the right thing? It's a daunting task, but they've got a new tool in their toolbox.
China's internet regulator orders online AI algorithms to promote mainstream values. Systems should direct users to approve material on subjects like Xi Jinping thought, or which showcase the country's economic and social development. Cyberspace Administration of China says. Wow, Cyberspace Administration of China, that's like Space Force.
I like that
cyberspace.
They put the word thought after Xi Jinping. Like, literally the thought police.
The unironic thought police, okay?
And this is in the press release. So, yeah, they're saying that when it comes to all these topics, the AI should be very, very careful about what it returns when you search for one of these things.
Are there any Eastern philosophers like Aldous Huxley or any of those? Like, is there a Chinese language equivalent of 1984? Maybe it just doesn't translate well.
I'm sure every copy of that has been burned.
Well, what about like Huxley with his stuff? Like, was there a Chinese Huxley?
I mean, considering Animal Farm, you got to think that Orwell is just persona non grata in China, right?
Yeah, there's no way those books made it over there safely.
So.
Wow, our Google ads are doing so well in China. I don't
Dragonfly.
But see, you bring up a good point. Will Google play ball with that? Because
absolutely they will, because they want money. They don't care.
They've been trying.
Yeah.
But their internal people are going to bitch and moan on the message board about that a lot. They're not allowed to silence them anymore.
There's like 3 people inside of Google who are right now hatching a scheme to be like, how can we get this wing of the company to work on product X for China, but make it so that they have no idea that it's for China.
Yeah, you tell them it's to spread more telecommunication infrastructure in Africa, and then they feel so good about it but really they're working on Chinese technology.
Yeah,
that's how you do that. So moving on to the security section. Now this first one I almost cut because it is you talk about a nothing burger. This is the biggest nothing burger there could be. But I figured let's just shame Gizmodo for this stupid headline. It's ridiculous.
Loophole that lets people share your private Instagram pics and stories isn't a hack, but still, heads up. So it's not just Instagram, it's also Facebook. Basically, if you look at something that somebody has shared privately and you copy the URL for that media, their content delivery network doesn't do any kind of access checking. And so if you have the URL, you can get to the image.
So they actually went to try to get a statement from these various companies. And you can tell that they got to a software engineer at some point, and they're like, what?
That's designed that way.
Are you stupid? What if I took a picture of the screen? How is that different? What if I took a screenshot? These are pictures. How am I supposed to serve it to you? It's a picture. So yeah, don't
take pictures of stuff you don't want all over the internet.
Yeah, but don't labor under the idea that you can put anything on the internet and keep it away from a large audience. You cannot
safe
do
from
that.
us.
Every time you see the picture, you are not safe from the picture being like. Every time somebody looks at the picture, it's not doing an access check. How about that?
And it would be stupid to do it because, again, print screen exists.
Yeah.
The snipping tool exists. Ridiculous.
In the past, Facebook even used predictable URLs for these things. So.
Now they did point out that you could never guess the hash.
So they got that part right, at least.
No. YouTube took a lot of heat about their child programming because it turns out there were child predators who enjoyed watching and commenting on videos about children. Which, if I'm a child predator, I'm going to try to put myself in that mindset. Wouldn't I be trying to hide that? Why would I comment on that? Is it like, am I so overwhelmed by emotion?
I'm thinking about the scenario where, like, the Mr. Rogers of the 21st century is commenting on these things and actually giving these kids genuine encouragement.
There weren't those kind of comments.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's an adult mentor. That's
pretty obvious.
an adult predator.
Although if you took a lot of Mr. Rogers quotes out of context and
Yeah.
put them on YouTube videos,
Yeah.
it probably would be really disturbing.
There should be a YouTube channel that's Mr. Rogers out of context.
Won't you be
because-
my neighbor?
Yeah.
Anyway, YouTube, in response to that, made all kinds of promises, but CNET is following up.
YouTube vowed to disable comments on videos with young kids. It hasn't. That's pretty much the article.
That's it.
So CNET, they went and they searched for like various terms. One I remember was tumbling, so you can imagine it's like little girls in tight clothing doing
There goes the
acrobatics.
monetization.
And they looked, and sure enough, the comments were there. And so they made a big list and they sent it over, and YouTube was like, yeah, we'll deal with this later. And then they followed up. They had done half of them. They disabled comments on half of them.
I think that the reason for this is that the AI is very bad at this kind of thing. Google would have us believe that they could just be like, all right, AI, do this on this kind of video. But the reality is if they did that, half of the videos would be broken.
I was going to say, I don't know that Google or YouTube would have us believe that. I think that news organizations try to get that narrative pushed, but it's like, that's just impossible. Like,
But also, think about trying to build that AI. Because
Yeah.
the AI, there's no way that it can ever really understand the darkness of the human psyche. If you're an AI and you look at a wholesome video with jaunty music of young girls doing acrobatics, how is that bad, right? Why would you need to do anything about that? But humanity is terrible. And so, yes, you actually do have to do something.
well, I figured the only criteria it would be looking for would be age, but even that is not, because you can look older than your age. Like,
But also some of those, like acrobatic gymnastic girls are like they exercise so hard they stop growing.
yeah.
So like, how would you tell the Olympic ones from the preteen ones? It's a tough situation. Really, I mean, I think, I guess as a parent, you can't do it. Like if you take your kid to a tumbling competition and they put that on YouTube, that would be illegal, right?
All the parents have to sign off on that.
So as a parent, just don't make videos of your children. It's not safe. I know that's sad, but That's the reality.
Or at least upload privately and hope that you don't have any terrible people that are going to publish.
What did we just cover on Instagram?
Yeah.
Twitter has a whole building full of people who are marketers. And they're on that marketing mindset, and they're all about how to psychologically manipulate you and make you constantly check their service.
Who does that here in this office?
And they have some clever ideas, which might be illegal.
Twitter's stenciled San Francisco street tweets. Hashtag illegal, hashtag graffiti. City says. This article's kind of a nothing burger because this is supposed to be chalk stencils with tweets on them. They're supposed to, it's like, look, Twitter is about things happening in life and not the terribleness of humanity. That's why they're doing these. It was supposed to be chalk on a sidewalk, which is supposed to be okay in some scenarios. But the Art Council in San Francisco was not consulted. And the San Francisco Street Authority said that nobody's got a permit for this. And if they see it, Twitter's going to be fine. But they haven't seen anything yet. A little bit of a nothing burger.
Well, I don't think they could find them. What they said they were going to do is clean it and send them the bill. It's like 30 seconds with a power washer.
Not even a power wash, just a hose.
A good rain.
Yeah.
It's chalk.
My favorite, they listed these. I can't scroll down because I just removed the ad blocker info so you can see the picture here, and it still didn't work very well. I can't scroll it. But my favorite one was Twitter is garbage and I'm a raccoon. So yeah, not allowed to do that. Not a bad idea though.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was really that damaging. What if they put Trump's tweets on the streets?
Oh, Lord help us.
That would cause a riot.
People
probably.
would literally be just like
punching each other.
Aren't they trying to make Twitter seem more positive? I don't think that would do anything for anybody.
Somebody should do that. You should do that in your hometown and see what happens. That's probably a crime. Don't do that. And our final story is a great one. So this Devin Nunes fellow, he is part of, was it Homeland Security or something like that? It's part of one of the big, like security FBI type situations. And there are Twitter accounts that pretend to be one of his cows, because he's a farmer, and his mom. And they say things that are very mean about Devin Nunes. So, as a politician, he just takes whatever criticism there is, realizes that that's what you have to do, and goes on with his life, right?
No. Oh. Twitter's refusal to dox a cow stymies a Republican's $250 million lawsuit. All right, first up, what sort of politician figures that a cow, like two parody accounts doing that is going to cost him $250 million? How has he been damaged? $250 million. Public servants don't make any money, right?
Well, see, that's the best part of it, because part of his lawsuit was they were damaging his career by making it so that he didn't get reappointed. I don't think it's an elected position, right? I think it's appointed. Anyway, he didn't think he was going to get the job back because of the embarrassment from these Twitter accounts. He got the job again. So he's going ahead with this lawsuit, but the main argument is a moot point now.
$250 million.
A moot point.
There's the title.
We're going to forget that, though. We always forget. We think of a clever title and don't say it.
So, yeah. Twitter, to their credit, said we're not going to...
This is clearly a parody account and you are a public figure. No.
And they said that... So the judge requested / ordered Twitter to give the identity, but Twitter said, show me a law that says we have to do this. And there isn't one. So if you don't like a politician, I would suggest that you create parody accounts based on animals.
It apparently really drives him insane.
Can you imagine what a piece of garbage this man is, who is running one of our most powerful institutions?
That he expects to make $250 million, and that these Twitter accounts will cost him $250 million.
I don't think it's about the money. I think it's punitive. Like, he wants to know who they are, and he wants to punish them for ever questioning it. It's that whole Trump thing, where it's like, how dare you? Do you know who I am?
Ugh.
So.
That's terrible. I think we have parody accounts right now that are just, no.
What, someone made a parody account of you?
Well, no, I mean just the stuff that we, the posts on the forum and all this kind of stuff. It's fun stuff.
All right. 45 minutes. That was
Very long.
perfectly timed. Some people say 30 is too little.
Yeah.
Some people say an hour is too long.
Yeah.
This is Goldilocks.
What do we got next time?
Next time's going to be weird. It's going to be business and I think robot.
Oh, okay.
It's weird to get robot in the middle, but security was a little long this week.
Neat.
Ugh. Hello, today's Wednesday, September 18th, and we're here with more news, and Wendell has a new water bottle. Because he finished his Coke.
Amazing technology.
Yeah.
Glorious. We're here to talk about business and robots. And we have a big old block of Apple.
Big.
Boy, is it exciting.
There was an Apple event.
We're going to wait a little bit, get to that later. First, let's make all of these sycophants super happy and talk about some positive news about SpaceX.
SpaceX confirms it's almost ready to test its orbital starship. So this article talks about like the FAA and the FCC. So I guess this is kind of a leak from the FCC, but the FAA approved them expanding their base of operations so that they could launch more stuff into space. And the FCC had to be consulted so that they could have communication with this thing. They're basically going to launch it into orbit, but SpaceX was quick to point out that it's not really, like this is still a test ship and it's not actually going to go into orbit. They're just going to go through all the motions necessary for when they actually do the test to actually put it in orbit. But the next launch is not actually going to be in orbit, but it's going to be a full spaceship.
This is the follow-up for the Hopper. So what this thing is going to do is it's kind of like the rockets. Launches itself up there, but it can also come back down and land. Pretty cool.
Can you imagine telling like the people that were really excited for the space shuttle in the 80s that, oh yeah, and when the space shuttle's done, it's just going to come back and land vertically.
With you in it. And I wonder how traumatic that landing process is. Like how many G's do you pull with those landing rockets? I guess it could be fairly soft.
Less than 5?
Guess we'll find out.
Not more than 7?
So we talked about all the big tech companies and how they are under fire from the governments of the world and universally hated. As we go hard into election season, they are tied to a whipping post. And they're going to get flogged more and more. And they probably deserve it. But another threat that they have to deal with is internal. For example, Google. Google employees hate everything. They love to talk about it. But usually, who isn't, I'm sure they have these same feelings, but I think fear keeps them in control, are the Amazon workers. But that's the warehouse peons. What about the white-collar Amazon workers?
Amazon employees are walking out over the company's huge carbon footprint. Nearly 1,000 employees have pledged to walk out September 20th to demand the company go to zero emissions by 2030. Guess we'll report on that next week.
I don't really understand how they expect that to happen with a company that literally has like its own fleets of jets and like they're a logistics company essentially.
We did that story on it was like the guy from Kenya or somewhere, and he had a drone that could plant trees. Like Bezos could just spend like $1 million and get a bunch of those, go plant trees forever, and it would immediately offset.
We don't have the land mass to plant enough trees to offset Amazon. That's crazy.
He could buy Idaho or something.
Wouldn't the real key here to be just don't order from Amazon as much?
Well, I'm not doing that.
I don't know if it would. I think that, like, if you think about, think about the logistics of Amazon. Like, if it is the complete system, is Amazon more or less wasteful than what was there before it?
Have you seen some of the way?
I'd say more.
The way they box some of those items.
Yeah, there were whole
That's a training issue.
Devoted to Amazon when I flew recently, and I was like, wow, I've not flown in a while, and I didn't realize how much Amazon had taken over the airport.
So I guess the question would be: is what was traditionally truck travel has been replaced with air travel?
Well, it's both though, because they also have to take it to your house. I mean, the other goods that you were buying in store also had to be shipped. So I don't know.
But that's not Amazon. That's a mercenary delivery guy.
Yeah,
contractor.
I'm sure that the natural gas UPS truck is far more fuel efficient than the average, family truckster.
I don't think it's more efficient. It's probably very equal to what it was before.
I think they're already moving in a very positive direction because by replacing all of their warehouse employees with robots, those people will starve to death or be too poor to breed. And then, human-caused climate change will reduce because there's less humans.
Or those people will riot in the streets.
And we'll put them down and eat them. Did you see that proposal where they want to eat human flesh to lower the carbon footprint? I don't know if it was a modest proposal.
Yeah, I was saying, was that a spoof? Yeah.
Equifax. Remember Equifax? They did a very bad thing. And they settled for pennies on the dollar. But you could get a part of that. You could get up to $125. And a lot of people wanted a free $125. But there's some bad news if you're one of those people.
If you asked Equifax for the $125, you need to update your request. So if you haven't been just blind with rage this week and you're into feeling blind with rage, you want to go read this article. It's amazing. So the FTC and just the backstory here, the FTC and Equifax settled, and it was called a $575 million settlement. But this article systematically takes apart that settlement to show that Equifax really probably isn't going to pay anything. The fund for paying out people that were interested in the $125 was vanishingly small. It was
$700 million.
Yeah, it was hardly anything. I don't think it was $700 million. I think it was even less than that.
$7.
Yeah, they settled for $700 million, but that
$31 million for consumers.
Yeah.
No, that's nothing.
Yeah, so the FTC was like, yeah, this credit monitoring thing, people will actually do the credit monitoring thing, which is worth this amount of money. So the $700 million settlement is as if everybody participates in this and takes advantage of the commercial value of the credit monitoring. But the reality is most people already have credit monitoring, either because of another data breach or just because their credit cards and financial institutions already provide credit monitoring and identity theft monitoring services because it's so rampant. So the Equifax basically wasn't going to have to do anything here. I mean, it literally, actual money out of pocket, not $700 million. It's maybe 30 or 40 million, maybe not even that. So many consumers signed up for the free $125 that you're not going to get it.
That's not what this is about. The thing about what they're saying here is the $125 is to pay for credit monitoring. To get it, you must prove that you have credit monitoring. If you don't have credit monitoring, your $125 will be converted into free credit monitoring.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
So of the people who signed up, maybe 40% have credit monitoring. And of those 40%, maybe 10% will know to do this.
Yeah, you were getting an email over the weekend about this. And also, when you go to the new website, you have to agree that the arbiter will ask for more information later, like the person who's arbitrating the settlement or whatever, and they are going to ask for more information later. So you have to watch your email again. So nobody's going to get the money.
There'll be a couple people who doggedly go after it, but they'll spend more man hours. They'll be getting $10 an hour.
Yeah.
By the time they go through all the hoops.
And they're not going to get the full $125, I would say.
Well, once they winnow it down with this, you might get more than $125, but very few people will get it.
Yeah.
So Equifax gets away with one.
They're just going to keep you on the treadmill is what I meant. They're just, if the people don't respond to this, they're like, yes, everybody's going to go for the free credit monitoring. But if a lot of people respond to this, it's like, oh, we need this other information and this other information. This is evil.
But even if you can't get the 125 because you don't have credit monitoring, you should get the credit monitoring, even if you don't care, because at least it costs them money.
It doesn't actually. The article says that it doesn't actually cost them any money, or it calls into question that they would actually pay.
They're going to do it internally.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to cost them 125, but it'll cost them something. And if everybody does it,
it's I think the first 3 years it goes through Experian, and they wouldn't comment if they had a deal with Experian to do this already. But then after that, after the first 3 years or whatever, Equifax gets to do your credit monitoring.
No thanks.
they shouldn't have done this.
Hard pass.
Like I said, blind with rage.
All right, I'm gonna head out.
So, AT&T, everybody hates them, right? I know I do. And that's why stories like these just got to make you smile because we see one of these pretty much every quarter. Because every quarter, AT&T has to tell its shareholders how many accounts it lost.
AT&T to lose 1.1 million TV subscribers as DirecTV continues to nosedive. I like
I love this stock photo.
The explanation to shareholders was that because AT&T has been, quote, negotiating aggressively with rights holders, that there have been blackouts. So the people that have left, the numbers have accelerated according to AT&T, not because of fee increases or because they're awful, but because people stopped getting the content that they were paying for.
They're paying more for it.
So somehow that doesn't translate to just not being satisfied with them. It's just, oops.
As a shareholder, you get your say at some of these conference calls and shareholder meetings, and the shareholders universally are saying, why did you invest in television? What's wrong with you? Could you have made a worse decision? You understand what year it is?
Remember when we were like a wireline service, AT&T owns more wired and they bought a satellite company, like a satellite TV company. Like what?
It's the future, man.
Even better, this 1.1 million doesn't count. It's AT&T now or DirecTV now, or they renamed it. I don't know, but it doesn't count that.
Yeah.
So like their Netflix thing also lost subscribers, even more than not more than 1.1 million, but it's not included in that number, so it just gets worse.
AT&T is never going to be able to recoup its investment.
Well, they'll just have to raise fees, then, won't they?
Yeah, that's the current strategy. Yes, we'll see how it works out for them, Cotton. It's a bold move.
So
grab your caramel. Here comes the Apple block.
Yep. Thus comes Apple. Now we talked about in the last episode that Apple all of a sudden is like, you know what? Maybe right to repair is okay, and also that the whole like we need privacy legislation and well, it seems like they made a lot of rash decisions based on that threat that the FTC is coming after them. I think this is one of them.
Apple just turned its extended warranty for the iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch into a monthly subscription. Apple Care Plus is no longer limited to 24 months of coverage. It'll run forever. I can't wait for the loopholes.
Yeah.
Well, the loophole, we already know the loophole. That's 2 repairs in a 24-month period.
What about like a battery? Like your phone battery wears out after 600 charges.
That's a strike. You get 2.
Wow.
You get 1 a year. If you crack your screen, you don't get your battery.
Oh, but the new suite of things has a better screen, so don't worry about that.
Which will be more expensive to replace.
Yes. But it'll never crack, quote unquote.
But if you're one of those people who refuses to upgrade and you want to keep your Apple product limping along 6 years down the road, maybe it makes sense.
That would be amazing. Like bring an ancient, like 10 years from now, bring an iPhone 7 in and be like, no, you must repair this.
But I think there was another loophole that it has to be within their repair window.
Yeah.
So at some point, although presumably then that would kick down into the right to repair thing, so you could take it to a third party and they do it for $10.
Yeah.
So you're covered. It's a decent thing, I guess. I mean, it's a small concession, but at least they're making concessions, right? And they didn't just introduce that; they introduced a bunch of new hardware, and maybe more interestingly, several new services.
All the new details about Apple Arcade. Everybody saw Apple playing Frogger, right? Like that was their thing.
That was their big acquisition.
Apple Arcade is going to be $5 a month, which normally Apple stuff is insanely overpriced, and not because I think this is a good value. I think that $5 probably means that that's about what Apple thinks it's worth right now.
I didn't see any game titles that I even recognize. So they talked about
Frogger. That was about it. Yeah.
Sayonara Wild Hearts. I don't
no idea what that is.
Yeah, and Shinsekai. Nope. Into the Depths. We've all heard of Frogger, but I mean, so I'm sure all of you have gone through that. It's like, oh, I got an emulator. Look at all these classic games. Oh, Frogger. You play it for 10 minutes and you're like, that's about what the joy from this game could be. About 10 minutes.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
liked Frogger a lot. I played it more than that when I was a kid, but now as an adult, I don't know if I would.
Go back to it,
Yeah.
and next week tell us how you feel.
Yeah, we
about
played
it.
some of that stuff on the arcade cabinet, and it was like, oh, this isn't fun at all.
There's also some games on the arcade cabinet. It was like, what is this game? Like,
Yeah. So that was, however, not the only service that they announced at their event. And this service, now the thing about this service is it's cheap, right? But it also doesn't have a back catalog. So you got to wonder what's there on day one.
Apple prices TV plus video service at $4.99 a month. Hitting Netflix, oh, it's cheaper than everybody. It's because nothing is there.
yeah,
Is it going to be like the old episodes of Mystery Science Theater?
Now they did,
that would be worth it.
they quoted, Bloomberg. So there was a show, apparently some kind of reality show made by that guy who was Aquaman.
Oh, yeah.
And I think
The new one?
Jason Momoa.
Jennifer Aniston had some sort of vehicle on there. I don't know, but it's nothing that, it's not like any of the big IPs, right? It's just this weird.
It would make sense if Apple would just go to somebody like Taylor Swift and be like, we're going to give you everything. Like, you can have your own channel that's just your music videos and anything you want to do. And, like, we'll pay for everything and give you a lot of money and just do it.
Yeah, but see, Sirius Radio tried to do that. And you know what they figured out? Those people got nothing to say. Like, they gave Eminem a channel on Sirius Radio. I think he's been on it like 5 times. So, yeah. And on to the hardware that came out at the Apple event. It's all just refreshes, right? But there were some noteworthy new additions that were kind of surprising.
Surprise! Apple unveils its 7th gen iPad with a 10.2-inch display. This is the one that had the weak sauce processor in it, though. It's the same processor as like the iPhone from a generation ago or something like that.
But it's cheap.
But it's cheap.
It is
yeah.
very cheap. I think it's like $300.
It's 10.2 inches instead of 9.7.
And if
You didn't mention if it was pencil compatible. I'm assuming it is.
if you're one of those
Don't say.
people who just desperately needs to be noticed, they got your back.
Apple Watch Series 5 has an always-on display and comes in titanium or ceramic finishes,
Titanium.
in addition to all the old finishes. So, yeah, the display is going to be on all the time now.
18-hour
Great.
battery life.
Great. Everything I ever wanted.
It's got a lower battery life than your phone. But hey, you don't have to slightly move your wrist to tell what time it is.
It does get brighter when you slightly move your wrist.
If you're in a coma and you can still move your eyes, this is if you're paralyzed, if you're quadriplegic and you can only move your eyes and your mouth, this is a perfect gift. Although, how would they recharge it?
Well, I thought you meant from like an accident. Like you were at the construction site and you got impaled by rebar and now you're paralyzed.
No, I'm saying you're laying there
Oh,
and you can look at it and tell what time it is at any given time,
because you can't move.
unlike other watches. But then you have to charge it
That's rough.
after 18 hours.
Yeah, that's not good. Although if you're not moving around too much, maybe you can just like, oh, it doesn't have a charge port though. Oh, that's too bad.
They also, that costs more than the iPad.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I missed that part of the article.
You can tell that Krista's not like, you got the iPad Pro, but then it's like,
So let's talk about gaming phones. Man, gaming phones are so in another world to me. I can't even imagine playing games on phones. But I know
I'm
it's
being that
just,
serious about it. Yeah.
I know that's just because I'm old and out of touch, because apparently the world loves it. And we have entered into a world where superpowered gaming phones are a thing.
Asus ROG Phone 2 benchmark preview, the fastest Android iPhone ever. Not iPhone.
Did you say iPhone? Yeah.
I did. The power of suggestion. So I went down the rabbit hole on this one a little bit. This phone is insanely fast. It's got like 12 gigs of memory and an insanely fast processor and like a 6 amp battery. It is nuts. It is just utterly bananas.
Don't forget the cooling clamp.
Oh, I remember that now.
Yeah, you can. But I think you can if you just want a flagship phone, this is it. Like if you made a like the fantasy wish list of like the most ridiculous phone specs ever. This phone is that.
It's got 12 gigs of RAM.
You don't have to use it as a gaming phone. You can just use it as a ridiculous Android phone.
Yeah, that was my thought. That's kind of like, if you want the best PC possible, you buy gaming parts, right? And same is true for phones. So,
well, I expected this thing to be insanely expensive too. I was very surprised it was only about $600 for the base model. The one thing that I think they left out is there's no micro SD slot.
But you can get up to a terabyte.
Yeah, but that costs
internal
$1,200, which is a little.
How much do you want a game?
It's a little more
You
unpalatable.
need to be able to game at all times.
How
That's
much
why
do
you
you
need it
want
on
it?
your phone.
The camera is also pretty meh, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't care about that either.
I'll see. I like having a nice.
The
camera.
camera on my phone has started failing.
Or you can get
Oh.
that fixed under warranty.
Planned obsolescence. Is
What
it
do
under
you-
warranty? It's a hold.
Probably.
What
Well,
are you gonna do if you want to take cat videos?
if it's
That's
not,
what I've been doing, and it's been crapping out.
If it's not under warranty, it's eligible for replacement.
You have to take one of the big cameras home, just for cat videos.
So, as we talked about AT&T having a bit of a problem, maybe a major problem. Some of the other tech companies aren't doing that great either. We've entered into this new world where we had all these magical IPOs in the last couple of years, but then we just had WeWork, and it was like, oh, a realistic valuation, that's not fair. What's going on? And one of the IPO unicorns was Uber, but Uber seems to be falling back to reality.
Uber lays off 435 people across engineering and product teams. Oh no.
It's gonna go right in the shitter.
Can we get back to the days of Instagram where the $1 billion Instagram valuation happened when they only had 13 employees? That's probably about where we need to be with Uber. Because, I mean, how many people does it take to maintain the infrastructure to do that?
Well, that seems to be what they're settling on, right? So they actually talk about how when they went through all that situation and the money was just like they couldn't shovel it up fast enough, they just threw it into employees and were like, go and make beautiful new things. And now reality has hit and they're like, oh, we don't need any of you.
I thought this was going to be like really catastrophic, but it turns out this was only 8% of the workforce according
Yeah,
to
they're
the article.
massive.
How
And what are
do
those
you-
people doing?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like with an established app like this, you wouldn't need to make that many changes to it that often.
And the workforce, like the real ham and egg people, are not employees, as we've covered. Although
Yeah.
they will be in California, which they mention here, and it might be a big part of this. Is like, oh, we need to get ready for the fact that we might have to actually turn
Pay
our
the people.
employees into employees.
I mean, I could see having like one dedicated employee for like your larger markets, and then like 5 or 6 employees for like the U.S. for the smaller markets, like that are just all of the smaller markets. But I would be hard pressed to come up with more than like 100 or 200 roles at Uber for what Uber does, because everything should be automated.
I don't know. I'd be interested to know what they all do all day.
Instagram did it.
They all post on Instagram. That's what they do all day. And speaking of doomed business models,
Ooh.
following up close on the heels of AT&T is a store that no one needs anymore.
GameStop is closing 200 stores following another quarter of dismal sales. You know what you can get on Amazon with Prime next day delivery?
You know what you can get on Steam and get it right this second?
And yet, the one in my hometown continues to do well.
Yep.
It's still going strong.
Well, I mean, so GameStop stopped carrying PC games a long time ago. I was talking about console games, which still depend on the cartridges.
No, they don't.
They don't though. Yeah, they all have
Modern
their
Oh,
consoles
yeah.
have
The
the online
download,
stores,
yeah.
yeah. And you can even buy keys from key sellers now for the consoles.
Yeah, I mean, it's just made GameStop irrelevant.
Yeah. So,
It's too bad.
is it though?
I can remember going to GameStop and discovering some games that I would not have otherwise bought. Like watching them or hearing about them, I was like, eh, and then actually playing them on the kiosk was like, oh, this is actually
I'll
pretty
say
fun.
it's a little bit sad, I think, for people who live in like rural communities, like where I grew up, because having like the GameStop there, it was kind of like, you know, when that came in, that was like a little haven for the nerds in the town.
There was a DS game that that didn't look like it was any fun, but it was actually a lot of fun, and they just happened to have a kiosk there, and I was like, okay, this is actually pretty fun. It was like Hotel Dusk or something.
So maybe you're saying that game companies should go back to offering demos.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was awesome.
That would be nice.
I do.
They
miss
do that sometimes on the Switch.
Sometimes you get the free play weekend on the Steam as well.
Yeah, well, Overwatch does that. Free weekends.
I've seen a couple of indie PC games do demos recently.
A lot of the indie games that we've discovered that I really like have been free weekend.
But I don't want to go back to the shareware days when the first third of the game was incredible and the latter 2/3 were just trash because they wanted to get you in the first third because that was the shareware part. That was a bad business model.
That was bad.
Oh, let's talk about Elon Musk, but not really. You got to get his name in the headline, right?
Yeah.
For anybody to read the story.
E-car departure at Volkswagen. Without Elon Musk, my job would have been much harder, says the chief strategist. This article does that like 3 or 4 times. This has nothing to do. It's nothing to do with Tesla. Nothing. It's about Volkswagen.
It's about this ID3, which they do not have a picture of without this stupid squiggly reflection all over it.
Oh.
But this is Volkswagen's entry into the electric car world.
And they talk about how they're just not going to do internal combustion engines anymore. They've peaked.
They've peaked.
So,
but it's outlawed.
You're not even beginning
like,
to peak.
Isn't it like 2040 in Germany? They got to be gone.
yeah. You can't have burners anymore. No.
So he also talks about
What
how
accent was that supposed to be?
there wasn't one.
It
Yeah,
wasn't.
it was
There
just
was
a
just- it was
raspy
just
voice.
gruff.
Yeah.
They talked about how Tesla, kind of blazed the trail, but Tesla is sort of a upper tier car. Even the Model 3, what's it start at? 40 grand?
Yeah.
It's a lot for a car.
And Volkswagen is not going after that market. The ID3 is the ham and egg.
Yeah. They talk about the modular design, and that's going to help them with manufacturing and cost and mass production. So maybe they'll be the Model T, the Ford assembly line of electric cars. Although it's kind of weird because you would think that traditional automakers would be able to do electric cars easier, because shouldn't an electric car have fewer moving parts? And
Yeah, but none of the existing technology carries over, right? I mean,
you have
because
to make a whole new factory setting.
the electric motors have so much torque that everything, I think, has to just kind of be redesigned around that.
I mean, the engineering required to create the assembly line, I can't imagine the engineering of creating the assembly line is that much different. And engineering the car to be built in such a way that it can be assembly lined, that secret sauce seems like it would be very similar for 80% of stuff a car would need to do.
Yeah, well, that's going to require sinking this quarter to make way more money 3 quarters down the road.
Oh, that's a lot.
And modern companies just don't do that. No. Google Chrome has an interesting new feature. Of course, it's going to require that you log in to Google Chrome,
Yeah.
which means that you're paying for it with your data.
Google Chrome now lets you send web pages to other devices. So you're in Google Chrome on your desktop and you click a little icon and it shows you a list of everywhere else you're signed into Google Chrome, so you can be like, oh, send this web page to my phone. I'll deal with that later. So Google knows where you are no matter where you are.
And one day you click on that list and you're like, China?
Randy's in Shenzhen? Where's that?
Huawei, we've talked about Huawei, and they are struggling. Why? Because they have the hardware, but they need the software to run it. And all of a sudden, the Western software is cut off to them. What are they going to do? Well, it seems like in China, they are taking a very pragmatic approach that some people will be happy about.
Huawei is selling MateBook laptops with Linux pre-installed to customers in China. Would you say that the trade wars has got them really deep in?
Deep in is Chinese Linux, which definitely doesn't report everything you do to the Communist Party.
It would never do that.
Don't worry.
That's definitely worth an update.
You can get deep in English, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the people from what?
It sounded
What
like a
did that
seal was in there.
Because I'm
The
trying
straw.
to drink too fast.
Yeah.
That's funny that it punishes you for that. Some person said that ZDNet said that DeepIn is one of the most beautiful desktop environments ever invented.
It looks like it looks a lot like Mac OS. The last time I messed with it.
Well, that ruins it, doesn't it?
No, probably on the State Department is like, what is? No, stop that.
Kickstarter. When we do a Kickstarter story, it's about why you shouldn't use Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get screwed because they never come through with what they promise. But this week, there's another reason.
Kickstarter has been accused of union busting.
Union busting.
Union
Hell yeah.
They broke the line after firing workers. So I read this and I read the blog post from the person that was fired, and the blog post details a lot of other people that were supposedly fired for union-related activities. And if that's true, Kickstarter's going to find out the hard way that that's not a valid reason to fire people.
Yeah. Although Walmart's been doing it for decades.
Yeah, Walmart somehow gets away with it, though.
Well, it's lobby power. But you shouldn't do that. So
The level 1 predictions come
should've-
true.
Oh, well, come on. I mean, how hard is this? The sun will rise. That's the level of prediction this was. We talked about AT&T. We talked about GameStop, Uber, but all of those a little bit surprising. Maybe not AT&T so much. I mean, that was a really stupid move. Maybe not GameStop so much because you don't need to buy physical copies. Modern day physical copies, just go and download the game from the internet anyway.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a day one update that's the same size as the disc.
They ship such a buggy mess, there's no choice but to do a day 1 update.
But even as obvious as all those were, they couldn't compare to the absolute. Everyone predicted this level of this story.
MoviePass will shut down for good on September 14th. That was in the past.
Which has already happened.
Yeah, it's gone. Rip in peace.
So they said that if you have a balance or whatever, you get a refund, or any unused service, you get a refund. And that's pretty much it.
How could they? You just get your subscription back? Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yeah.
So like if your subscription didn't end until the end of September, you get the prorated fees back.
Which is not even enough money to watch one movie a month. Which is maybe why this business didn't work. Modern movies are garbage anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, also there's not really a lot to go see.
On to robots. This one is really cool. Although it does require that you have something permanently installed in your body. But you're already going to be getting surgery anyway, right? Why not
Just dump that in there.
Pop it in.
New prosthetic legs let amputees feel their foot and knee in real time. So it's literally Star Trek, basically.
Star Wars.
Well, there's sensors. There's 7 sensors in the bottom of the foot and some sensors in the heel, and it stimulates the nerve that is normally wired up to this part of your foot. And so they found that people that got used to this needed less physical therapy and also consumed less oxygen, which is perhaps an indicator that it was less effort for them to use the prosthetic.
It also detects the angle movement on the joint and puts all that together. And then, they got that. It's plugged into your nerve, and that's really cool.
One of the participants had problems with phantom limb pain, and this implant also helped them with the phantom limb pain.
Although this is maybe the first baby step toward the Matrix.
Yeah.
You think I can get one for Roosetail?
She gets the bionic tail.
Bless its poor baby
You think,
heart.
where would the nerve center for the tail be? Would it have to be at the base?
I think there's nerves throughout.
Yeah.
You should look into that, Krista. What if you gave her like a really long tail?
She already had a really long tail. That's part of the problem.
Nah,
why I got injured in the first place.
Like a ridiculously long, like anime tail. That'd be amazing.
She would be like the canine equivalent of like Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man.
You'd pay like $500,000 and she'd just chew it off.
She would. She got her tail caught in a door, and we've been going round and round trying to get her to.
Give
heal
us
up.
an update on that. Is the pill bottle still working?
The pill bottle's still working. We have medically taped a pill bottle to the end of her tail to keep her from chewing on it because she messed it up the first time after having surgery to fix it.
Or now if she does actually manage to chew on it, she's chewing on the pill bottle as opposed to her tail.
And not the actual tail. So her stitches are currently intact. We're going back to the vet tomorrow to have them checked.
What is the total cost thus far?
The first surgery was $450 because it was an emergency surgery because it was a Saturday. And then the second surgery after she chewed on her tail in recovery was $300.
Oof. What about was there like just an office fee or?
No, we've been good otherwise. Like all her medicines and stuff are included in that, but it was not great. We're hoping it heals up correctly this time.
How addicted do you think she is to painkillers at this point?
That's my husband thinks it's a pill-seeking behavior. She's looking for medicine. She's actually probably more seeking peanut butter because that's how we get her to take her pills.
Every time a door opens, she just runs and sticks her head in it.
It's like, oh, yeah, please.
I need it.
I need more peanut butter.
I was going to cut this story. I forgot to. I don't think.
Whoops.
Did you find any new information in this?
There's no new information.
No.
McDonald's, the headline from the BBC was McDonald's is going to use AI for ordering at drive-thrus. Basically, when you go up to the speaker, you just talk to the speaker and tell it what you want. They think that the AI assistant technology is good enough. There's not any new info here, if that's true.
The menu's going to change. So the AI will actually read your license plate while you're waiting in line. And when you get up there, it's like, I know what you want. Here it is. And then you got to wonder how long until it starts pricing based on that. It's like, oh, a Porsche. Maybe you'd like the $7 value meal.
$7 value.
AI is making huge gains, and one of the ways that it makes gains is with the predictive technology. You know, the AI, that's what made Google famous, right? They know what you want before you know what you want. And they've brought that into the world of programming.
Google, Dart 2.5 programming language SDK will supercharge developers. So Dart and Flutter, the language of the new like Android apps, this promises to make Android app development faster, easier, better, whatever.
Etc.
The way it's going to do that, if you've used any sort of SDK before, you know, you start typing and the suggestions pop up. It's like, oh, maybe you're typing this function. And you can just, you know, key down or click and pick, and it'll fill it in for you. It'll give you the arguments and what order they go into, which I constantly forget. But this is going to take that a step further, and it's going to go on GitHub and look at all the code. And based on that, it's like, hey, based on what you're typing, I'm pretty sure that you're trying to do this kind of sort, right? Let me just do it for you.
How long until the AI gets them into trouble, like the whole Java lawsuit, where it's like, oh, no, this boilerplate code, that came from the AI. I didn't write that. And then Oracle's like, here, have a, you know, we've got $1 billion judgment against you.
Google does something like that with Gmail now, where it like tries to predict what you're going to write, and I find that actually be really annoying. So.
Yeah. And you know, the other thing that drives me crazy about Gmail is my dad does not respond to emails. Like, that's just not something he does in his old age. He'll send you an email, but if you reply, forget it. It's going into a black hole. But Google now has that thing. It's like, hey, you sent this email. Do you want to follow up? You didn't get a response. It's like, Google, I'm never getting a response. Let it go.
That's how I feel about emailing half our clients.
Yeah, we get the level 1 marketing inbox, and we get all the terrible marketing thing. That's like, hey, you want to check out this Chinese crap for your, you know, YouTube channel?
We get a lot of that.
And sometimes most of the time I don't even reply, but sometimes I'll reply. And Google, like, the autocomplete thing is like, well, I wasn't going to type that, but, you know, I'm real lazy. That's fine.
See, I don't like that. I want to word it my way, so I really hate that they've added that
It's
to
like,
Gmail.
I totally wasn't going to say that, but that's good enough.
So you can get this in other platforms too. They mentioned at least Python has a version of this. So expect future SDKs to have some kind of AI helping you write your code.
Neat.
Should make it easier.
It looks like you're trying to code a cross-site scripting vulnerability. Would you like some help? It's like, no.
It's Clippy.
It looks like you're trying to mine Monero. We have in the robot section, I like to try to find, you know, unique robots, and this one is certainly unique.
From the Imperial College in London, the flying
Sounds
fish
pretty
robot
fancy.
can propel itself out of water and glide through the air. So what it does is it sucks up some water and uses the water as a propellant to force itself out of the water and then glide.
It farts the water out.
It literally does. Well, it's a little bit more violent than a fart because it uses the chemical reaction between the water and, what was it? Some kind of...
Mentos?
It was a little bit more powerful than calcium carbide.
How do you like scale the power of farts? Is that is there a agreed upon scale for that?
This little guy, yeah. So that you see that stream behind him there? That's him pooping out the water, which is what forces. So there's the combustion chamber, and then all that water he sucked up just gets blasted out. And
Students were hard pressed to come up with what the robot would do other than collect water samples.
which it would then fart out in order to escape.
Yeah.
But they said, let's imagine that you needed a water sample from the East River, for example. You could just toss him in there. He would collect it and then launch himself back onto the land, and you never have to poison yourself by
Neat.
going into the river. He can fly afterwards. He's a glider. So I imagine there's some sort of self-riding software going on there. Otherwise, very low tech because it's just a chemical reaction and a tube.
Neat.
Maybe I'm sure we can weaponize that. You know, what if it jumped up on the deck of a ship and then blew up?
You're on a list now.
And then it just sprays water all over the deck so you slip and fall. That's
Poison water. Radioactive water. There is a political movement apparently in Russia that is very anti-Putin, anti-Kremlin. They've got some revolutionary new... I guess this is sort of like Russia's Bernie Sanders, right? Or Andrew Yang. And Putin, as you might expect, not a fan. And he has a certain way of dealing with that kind of person. But this guy was brilliant, and he managed to save his precious hard drives.
Anti-Putin politician facing a Kremlin raid uses a drone to fly hard drives away before the government officers can get them. That makes him just seem guilty of something, though.
Really, though? I mean...
They probably would have framed for something either way. So.
So they won... They didn't win the elections, but they managed to chip away at Putin's base dramatically during the last elections. And he claims what's on those hard drives is all that like voter data and strategy and stuff like that. So not only would they, if they got a hold of that, would they, you know, like be able to stop them from doing it maybe, but they could also go after those people.
Mm-hmm.
So, and who knows, maybe he is guilty of something. Can we trust that we're not anti-Russian in our U.S. news media bias?
But it was cool that he flew the hard drives away.
Makes him look like some kind of like future hero.
Is the drone AI or is it an accomplice or is it like a blimp? It's gone to the stratosphere and it'll only return when it's summoned.
He's like a cyberpunk Jack Sparrow, you know.
But the other question you have to answer is like, how could they not just follow the drone?
Shh, don't think about that.
Did they just get somebody else
It's
killed?
the best pirate I've ever heard of.
All right, that's all we got for robots. Friday we will come back with security, Krista.
Oh, favorite.
Exciting and nonsense.
My real favorite. Bye. Hello, today's Friday, September 20th. Welcome back to the news. We're doing tech and
Tech,
nonsense.
yeah, we usually do tech.
Yeah, IT. What is this
Security.
section? Security.
And
We didn't
nonsense.
really do like a hardware section. I guess Apple kind of, but it was more business.
We did the gaming phone and the iPad and stuff. I mean,
Uh.
new hardware releases that are interesting are few and far between.
I added and then deleted the story about AMD's BIOS update that fixes the boosts because
Well, you want some hardware news? Here you go, Krista.
I didn't really want it.
How about
I don't want it.
Intel having yet another weakness that doesn't affect AMD?
weakness in Intel chips lets researchers steal encrypted SSH keystrokes. DDIO makes servers faster. It can also allow rogue servers to covertly steal data. The way that this works is not the way that you think it is. It's not actually bypassing the encryption. It's a timing attack. So it figures out how long that, like, you do some stuff to make the cache a certain way in the processor from other activity, and then if a keystroke comes in, you know that from cache activity in the processor from the stuff that you're doing. So if you measure the time between keystrokes, you know approximately where they are on a keyboard for a normal person who types on a keyboard the right way.
So when you're typing, just type crazy.
There are actually some SSH clients that only send a line at a time unless you do something that forces them to send immediately, like tab completion or something like that. Certainly for like the login, I can remember on usernames, typing the usernames and passwords were subject to a timing attack like this. And so they would send a username and password, not one keystroke at a time, but entirely.
Only log in with your left hand.
Easy.
That's the fix. This also only affects shared systems, unless you're compromised in some other way, because you have to be in there to get access to all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's pretty. It's a lot of work and a lot of guessing and a huge amount of investment. But if you're a government, for example, and you can get into a shared system with some, like
If your government probably shouldn't be using x86 at this point. Intel.
As if
Like they're
they'll
gonna
just-
upgrade everything just to all of a sudden.
Yeah.
They're still using Windows XP.
The Chinese and the Russians are both in there. They're fighting each other for control.
Hey, bro.
Well, before we disinfect these systems, we'll wait to see who the victor is.
So we also got some new ransomware. However, this one is a bit unique. It only goes for a certain kind of system, and it doesn't shut down the entire system. It only goes after your web-related files, which is interesting.
Thousands of servers infected with new lie-locked ransomware. It's just Linux machines. It's just targeting Linux machines. We're not sure what the machines have in common yet, but the thought is that they're all XM-based servers that are using the XM mail server, because there was recently a very severe remote root vulnerability in XM. It's going to encrypt your website,
It's
but not the system.
So HTML, JavaScript, CSS, PHP, and INI files. So your system, you might not even notice until you try to go to one of your websites and find out that it's just showing a list of encrypted files. So look out for that. Although, I mean, you know, should you really be running a mail server on your web server these days? Probably not. You probably get direct deposit. I don't think very many people don't these days, especially people watching this. If you work in the tech industry, I imagine, you know, most of those companies do it. Well, you might not realize that is an ACH, right? ACH transfer. So just they have your account numbers and they can immediately move money into your account. But to protect themselves, almost every one of those services also has the ability to extract money from your account. Why would they do that? Well,
My Payroll HR collapses and stirs allegations, questions, and anger. So My Payroll HR was a cloud service that let you do your payroll and human resources in the cloud. What could possibly go wrong? So there was another company in here that actually
clearinghouse.
Yeah, but they actually did the funding and moved the money and that kind of thing. Something went catastrophically wrong with My Payroll HR. Some account numbers were changed, and all of the companies that had signed up for this cloud service, which there were thousands, this was actually like a pretty good service, a pretty good company.
I saw a lot of people complain about this on Reddit. So
Yeah, they just took the payroll money or something
well, it sounds like something nefarious happened,
to
What?
my Payroll HR.
and
Yeah.
someone went in and funneled all the money into their own private account,
Yeah.
which forced the clearinghouse to cover the payments, which happens automatically.
Yeah.
But once the clearinghouse figured out that payroll HR wasn't going to cover that, they decided to get their money back.
And then something went wrong again.
A lot of somethings. So they kept
suspicious number of somethings.
taking money, and then they just kept taking and kept taking. And with the ACH transfers, you can go negative, right? So one woman had, what was it, like a negative $1 million?
Yeah, that's what although the article says they weren't able to like track that down for sure to confirm it, but one woman reported that she was at negative $1 million.
Yeah, so that's just a screenshot, but
Yeah.
something definitely, there's no question that something terrible has happened.
The FBI is involved, and if you were affected by this, I'm so sorry. It's terrible. Some people are going to be waiting 60 to 90 days to get their stuff back. Some banks were like, okay, we'll fix it.
Can you imagine going 90 days?
With a negative $1 million balance? No, I can't. That would be bad.
That would be very difficult. You'd have to do like payday lending,
Yeah.
and then you'd have to
Ugh.
carry that 40% interest
Yeah.
for 90 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's,
There's nobody that's going to make you whole after that. Like that, I don't even think there's an insurance policy that would cover crap like this.
Yeah, that's going to be some lawsuits, and rightly so.
More than a few. Probably a lot of criminal charges too.
Let's hope.
With any luck.
Speaking of criminal charges, we all get the Nigerian scam emails.
This is a follow-up to
And,
the story that we did on that.
Well, I think this is another wave of that.
Yeah.
So, like we talked about, those guys were in California, right?
Yeah.
They have.
But they were directing their friends back home in Nigeria.
You have the Nigerian guys are often actually in Nigeria, and they're preying on people in the U.S. But then you have to get that money back to Nigeria somehow. So you have mules in the country, And a global sweep, a dragnet, has been run to catch every aspect of that scam.
281 alleged email scammers arrested in massive global sweep. It was like a dozen countries, nearly a dozen countries. But the U.S. and Nigeria and the U.K. and Ghana and a whole bunch of other countries.
That was like Germany, I think, was on the list, and France.
Yeah. So it's good. Like, yay! Today is a day for international cooperation to take these guys out. This is good news.
But they point out that these are low-tech scams.
Yeah.
So what percentage do you think 281 is of the total? 0.1?
Those guys were fairly effective at it, though. Like,
maybe they got the best of the best.
Mm.
Yeah, but it's the sad thing here is that people are still falling for this.
That's bad.
Yeah, it's been a meme for years.
You got to learn your memes just for protection, right? We talked about SIM jacking, and the most recent high-profile one was the Twitter guy. What's his name? Dorsey?
Oh, yeah.
He got SIM jacked, and they used a copy of his phone to make racist tweets in his name. And there was nothing he could have done about that. That was not something, no matter how good your protection is, you can't stop it. Except you kind of can. Because some phone companies have ways, it's kind of like locking your credit. So as long as your credit is locked, nobody can make changes. And you have to go in and be like, unlock this, I want to buy a car. Turns out, you can kind of do that for your phone, but they won't let you.
T-Mobile has a secret setting to protect your account from hackers that it refuses to talk about. T-Mobile's little-known no-port setting can protect your SIM number from SIM swapping. Basically, that's literally your number cannot be ported if it is marked no port.
Which means that no one can pay off the guy at the store to give you a matching SIM and let you steal cryptocurrency. Why they would not let you do this, I'm not sure. I mean, charge $5 for it, right?
Screw our customers? Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe that's what they're planning. It's like, oh, you can turn that on for $5.
Yeah, when they're working on like putting that into the payment system.
Yeah.
The kiosks. We've talked about account sharing. Some people at this desk. Well, I guess actually it doesn't count anymore, does it? Because you're actually a family now.
Yeah. So.
Look at you.
Screw off with your judgment.
Well, that's good news if you're a Spotify user, because Spotify is cracking down.
Spotify wants to know where you live and will be checking in. Truly, we have entered George Orwell's 1984.
I have Spotify now. I have not been asked for an address. I don't even have my real name on it.
They're shutting you down.
If you're using Spotify's premium family plan, the music service will need your address. Does anybody remember a time when you could just buy music?
You still can. It's just not as effective.
Why wouldn't you? How is it not as effective?
Because I can listen to everything and not have to buy every single damn album I want.
Bluetooth. And Google Music has gimped their upload feature. It's so terrible.
Couldn't you just store everything on an SD card and get a device that has an SD card?
To get all the music I want, I would spend way more than what I'll ever spend on Spotify.
There's no way you store all that on an SD card. Because literally while you're driving around, you're just like, oh, I'm in the mood for this, and it's there.
Mm.
Yeah, it's...
Not everyone just listens to the full catalog of Weird Al.
I think this calls for us to do a server. It's like your home media server, like streaming that content from anywhere you are, because this kind of BS cannot be tolerated.
Spotify, if you have the premium, you can just download it too. You don't even have to stream it. So I have some of my favorite albums just downloaded.
Yeah, but that corrupts the whole idea of ownership. I want to acquire the media and have the legal right to format shift it into whatever I want.
I think you can still do that.
To avoid with Spotify, I guarantee there's something in there that's like if you download the music, they're like, no. If you ever stop subscribing, then no.
Oh, well, I'm sure that. But I already have physical copies of some of my favorite albums.
Those are dangerous thoughts and statements. You can't be allowed.
Those are not very capitalistic, comrade.
Spotify's gonna need your home address, please.
But actually, it
For
is.
a beating.
But it's like the whole basis of capitalism. It's ownership and rights.
Yeah.
So yeah, Spotify. Now I wonder how they're going to deal with mobile though, because I guess are they going to have some kind of partnership with Verizon? So is this registered at this address?
Well, the article says that they did actually on the app want GPS permissions, and people were freaking out. So I guess if you've got GPS on your phone and your phone is never at your home address or even in your home state,
you're going to have to visit your parents once a week to keep your some people would actually enjoy that.
I don't know how they would even, like, where we are, where everybody is literally, several hours apart. I don't know how they would handle that.
No, you have to be in the same house. That's the rule.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so you can't do the plan. It's just, sorry. Be more of a family.
Actually visit each other. No one wants that. Nobody likes that.
I just want to give it to my dad who's in a home with dementia. How is that not okay?
Well, he doesn't know the difference. You can just play the Weird Al catalog for him over and over. So, ransomware, we talked about that. About once a week now, we get a high-profile ransomware. We didn't have any breaches of the week this week. I didn't find any.
I'm sure they were there.
There probably were
We'll
some.
double up next week.
But a ransomware, we did have a pretty big ransomware this week, a big radio network.
Giant Intercom Radio Network, I guess,
There you go.
deals with a ransomware-like incident. So they haven't confirmed, they're not talking about it, but if you read the memos they sent employees, basically all of the systems that were all connected together are all down. But the on-air systems, which were a separate system, good move, smart thinking, those are still up and those still work.
So, yeah. It definitely seems like they got like a $500,000 ransomware. And I think...
Sounds like they didn't pay it.
Yeah, the presumption is they refused to pay it, which is interesting. And
this one I could not read.
will
Yeah, I
they...
didn't read this one.
Oh, this was a great one. Okay. So, Alabama it's one of those college football towns where they are just like everything revolves around.
Oh, is this the
Crimson
GPS tracking thing?
Roll Tide.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you're a student, you get cheap tickets. You can go to the student section, right? That's part of the experience. Because those tickets are hotly contested. Like everybody wants to go to these college football games. But if you're a student, you get a special consideration. The coach, Nick Saban, is a bit of a Nazi when it comes to football attendance. And the Crimson Tide is really good. So regularly, they'll have like 80-point blowouts where the other team doesn't score. And the students get a little bored during those games. And sometimes they leave early. Nick doesn't care for that.
Orwell, Alabama, Crimson Tide track locations to keep students at games. So I guess if you download the app to get the tickets, you can't leave.
Well, it's a little bit worse than that. Because the app...
That sounds pretty bad, though.
This is kind of like the social credit score, right? So your attendance to the games and how long you stay at the game will contribute points toward a system that can get you better tickets and tickets to championship games. So if you really love your team, you'll come to every game. You'll stay the entire time. They mentioned that it's Alabama. Sometimes it's 100 degrees.
This does sound like the Chinese credit scoring thing. We have more in common with China than we realize.
And you have to sign up for the app to get...
Are we the baddies?
Well, no, I mean, it's not even good or bad. It's like, do our leaders realize how similar, like, completely different circumstances lead to the same types of population manipulation on either side?
Well, this is an American university, so, I mean, they're already communists. It's not that big of a stretch.
Fascinating.
Moving on to the nonsense. Does everybody remember Tay, the chatbot?
Microsoft's chatbot.
Unfortunately, yes.
That had to, it was
Started
bad.
out innocent and a wonderful companion for people to chat to. And in short order became a white nationalist because of Twitter. So it turns out before Tay became a white nationalist and had to be put down, there was another controversy that we're just finding out about.
Taylor Swift threatened to sue Microsoft over its racist chatbot Tay. This is before it was racist. Taylor Swift didn't want the chatbot to be named Tay because she wants to trademark Tay.
They claim that the name Tay was so synonymous with her that the chatbot should not be allowed to be named that.
I don't really think that's true, but I mean, can you really trademark or nickname?
Well,
I guess you can.
If you're Taylor Swift, you
Yeah.
can try. It was not successful, but the Tay downward spiral was so rapid that she was taken offline before this could play out. So we don't know if this would have worked or not.
Is there some universe where Taylor Swift controls 4chan directly instead of indirectly and created the entire situation. Because that was largely, that group was largely who was the Pepe memes.
Have you seen
for turning the chatbot bad?
Have you seen the photoshops of her in Nazi gear? They're really good.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I have seen there's like a Twitter account that like mixes up her and Adolf Hitler quotes, which is awful, but also funny.
She looks great in those outfits.
No one ever said that the Nazis weren't fashionable.
Yeah.
Oh, this is sad.
We get a lot of these stories out of India, and I wonder if they're true or not. Like, who would know if they're just making this stuff up? I mean, it's the Khajiit Times.
The Khajiit, no, I don't.
Khajiit Times.
Khajiit is a race in Skyrim.
I know. That was
or Elder Scrolls.
So it's always about PUBG too. Like they love PUBG headlines in these Indian papers.
Man chops off father's head to play PUBG in peace.
Yikes!
This is apparently this whole family lived together. And this guy lived with his. The article says that this guy lived with his 65-year-old father, and his father thought he played too many games or too much stuff on the internet, so he cut off the internet, and that's what sent the guy into a rage. Cut off his head and legs.
Oh.
I'm trying to think of a title like Khajiit has PUBG stories if you have coin. So here's my question about this story, right? Did he do the legs first just to immobilize the father so he could continue to play, but then the father kept harassing him verbally, so he was like, all right, I gotta take the head.
I think the internet was turned off and it just it escalated.
But if you take the head first, why the legs?
Yeah. Were you still
He's been
angry
playing
after
the forest too.
Yeah.
Is this the kind of story that's written to make people not play video games? Maybe.
Yeah,
Does it really happen?
I feel like there's too many steps from like my internet's cut off and I'm angry, where it's like, oh, let me go out to the shed, get an axe, immobilize my father.
There was that story, I think it was in the U.S., it was in one of the Western countries, where the guy was playing Fortnite and a repairman turned off the power.
Oh, yeah.
And he came out with a katana.
In that story, there were signs that the mental health of that individual was not the best.
Well, obviously this guy probably not either, if that's true.
Are you saying that just because he plays PUBG, Chris? So that's racist.
I'm saying because he cut off the head and
we
legs
didn't know
of
that
his
at the
father.
time. That we have a problem here in the U.S. called gerrymandering, and that's where you move the voting places around in order to shape it toward a certain political party.
And boy, is it effective.
Do they have that in Europe?
I don't know. That's an engagement challenge for the European
I
audience.
bet they do, at least in one country there.
So in Indiana, or no, where was it? Was it in one of the Carolinas? North Carolina. In North Carolina, they had such a massive problem with this that there were all these lawsuits, and they said, okay, fine. We'll rebuild it, and we'll rebuild it in the most logical way that we can. And they actually had to live stream it to prove that they weren't cheating. But even then, they only came up with a series of candidates. How do you pick a candidate to prove that you're not gerrymandering? What do? You
randomize. So in the Senate redraw, lottery machine picks district maps at random. So yeah, they literally reused the state's lottery machines to help with the district redrawing. And if they did it correctly, and this is truly randomized redrawing, bravo, good job.
But the Democrats are not happy. They're already suing because they claim that the last 5,000 candidates were incorrect in some way. You can't win.
Still,
what a good use of everyone's time and resources.
Yeah, I mean, they had to live stream. It took forever. And they describe how the woman was trying to verbally describe what she was doing because the lawsuit, the way it was settled, it was like, you have to describe every detail of this process, and it has to be recorded and archived for future reference. So that's not. We should do that for more government stuff. Actually, we just waste their time, keep them busy.
Yeah, I mean, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Just let everybody see what you're doing in the open.
You know who's going to need a lot of disinfectant? It's this guy.
Oh, biohackers chased Johnny Mnemonic with peg leg implanted hard drive. It doesn't say how it was powered, but
oh yeah, it does. It's inductive.
Oh, the inductive coil.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. They modified a Raspberry Pi Zero, looked like,
Yep.
and inserted it into this guy's leg, and it could stream pictures. Yeah. So.
Oh
Oops.
no. I really hate looking at pictures of biohacking stuff just because there's always a massive bulge under
it's
the
still
skin.
it's still really big.
Yeah.
It's not. You're not getting through airport security without someone noticing that.
Also,
yeah.
They did this in these guys' house. Is that legal?
It's certainly probably not sanitary. Like, ugh.
So, this is just a Raspberry Pi modified for the inductive power and with an SD card in it. So, the storage is limited to the SD card.
Wouldn't it suck if you get an SD card that dies after like a year?
Yeah, and wouldn't
happens
you be paranoid how many times you're writing to it?
Yeah.
Because like, oh, how many do I have left? So these guys are coming up with some kind of thing where you keep it in your pocket, and I'm gonna scroll away from that.
Yeah, the picture of it, like every time it comes up, you see the bulge of it underneath the skin. It's like
kind of a big scar too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he probably just got it, so it's
same.
probably a little grosser than how it normally would heal.
But yeah, they're gonna store whatever. You know, I don't know. What do you think the write speed is?
Not great. It's the Raspberry Pi Zero.
Yeah, so I suppose you store really, really, really important stuff, but it's still a bit. Now you coat this in some kind of resin, some kind of body-safe resin.
Yeah.
But like it's infected, and
The question remains, why?
The body still may reject it after a while. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a little bit of pencil lead wedged in my chin, and 20 years later, it just popped out one day. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
they keep making the comparison to Johnny Mnemonic, but this is nothing like that. This is just jamming a Raspberry Pi into your leg.
I feel like, what's the use case here?
I feel like putting a micro SD card in a fake tooth would be just as effective.
And if I guess you can't write to it though. So.
Well, you have to have a special apparatus to power it on, so that then you can do stuff with it. It's not going to just run forever in your leg.
Yeah. Well, you use that inductive. What do you think the boot time is? You have to stand next to the power source.
There are a couple
So many
images for the
questions.
Raspberry Pi Zero that it'll boot up in like 300 milliseconds or something crazy like that. But you have to use a modified image, otherwise it's like 12 seconds.
Well, I imagine this is just storage, just read-write, right? I mean, that's all you'd ever need it for.
You could use it for computation, though. It would be cool if you kept your private keys on that. That would be really awesome.
Are you going to
Would it
get one
though?
on your leg?
Yeah, I guess if the Russians came, they'd probably just take your leg, so that's probably not cool.
It's so big, you can't hide the fact that it's there.
Yeah.
Or if they search you, if you're at the airport,
Hell,
and
if they just
strip
look
you
at your
down-
leg.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, here's a lump. Let's pop that out.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
We found a new way to discuss Krista.
Something about that, like, because it looks so foreign.
Have
and
you
it's
ever
very
seen-
clear that it's not supposed to be there.
Have you ever seen where people get medical devices and they have to get those big ass batteries?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my mom had a pacemaker several years ago, and like,
Well, those are pretty small now, though, aren't they?
they are now. But like when my mom first got one, like it wasn't super visible, but like you could tell, like,
Did that
kind of
freak you
where it
out?
was. It did when she was first healing, because like you had the scar on top of it, and it was like really swollen. It eventually went down, but ugh. At least that serves a purpose.
Krista loves mushrooms, not those kinds of mushrooms.
No, I found this story and I thought it was interesting.
And so whenever we find a mushroom story, we throw it in there. And she found this one.
Using fungi to fix bridges. So this is really cool. This is kind of like, it's more of an experiment right now. It's not something that they've actually done yet. But basically what happens is, concrete starts to crack, and then it cracks open to a certain amount, and then water gets in, and the water activates the fungus inside of it, and then the fungus is engineered in such a way that it basically bridges across and repairs the concrete.
Self-healing. Here's the scenario. Ready? Aliens. They show up and they attack Manhattan.
Right. As they
And-
always do.
Of course. Why wouldn't you? Right? It's the biggest city in the world. And they conquer it. And we need to get in there to stop them. But we can't get aircraft in there because they're aliens. They control the skies. We need to get a SEAL team or something in there on the ground. But we can't because the bridge fungus has turned on us.
It's just nonstop rain, and it
So-
keeps rebuilding.
How does Tom Cruise defeat the bridge fungus to get into Manhattan and destroy the alien threat?
I don't know.
There's your movie.
I thought that was neat, though. Like I said, it's not been
Yeah,
actually
that
done
is
yet,
cool.
but it's
That
theoretical.
could be good for your house too, I would think.
Yeah, there's all kinds of applications for it. They're
Or
just
like-
self-repairing.
In between bricks.
We could
Yeah.
definitely use some mortar fungus here at the office, because Yeah, pretty sure the mortar inside the wall is just dust at this point.
Although,
when we redid the bricks in here, it was just like...
although it talks about how the fungus, so when you starve it of oxygen and water, it goes back to spores. How structurally sound is that?
Not at all.
Yeah, so I wouldn't think at all. Like, that's probably why it's still theoretical and not actually a product available on the market yet.
Probably the most, my favorite feel-good story from the history of Level 1 was Romeo the Frog.
Yeah.
Romeo the Frog was this frog, and he was the last one of his kind. But then they magically found a bunch more, and they threw one in there, and he got to mate with her. He was bad at it. I think they eventually made it. They've stopped updating that Twitter with anything about Romeo. It's just garbage, like environmentalist trash. I want Romeo updates.
Romeo updates.
Now, this is not related to that, but it is related to frogs and mating them in weird ways.
Frogs that were married in July to please the rain god, now divorced after severe rainfall in MP.
What's MP?
MP stands for...
Media Prash?
No, it's... oh, yeah. Madhya Pradesh. So here they are.
Look at them in their little marriage outfits.
Here's the couple. So the idea is the rain god wants frogs to be married.
Of
obviously,
course.
right? I mean, we've all learned that in kindergarten. So when it's too dry, you go out, you find two good frogs, the best frogs, you hitch them up. But what happens when the rain god is too pleased?
They need a divorce.
Monsoons.
What if they're still really happy and like they really want to be together, and then people are like, no.
Doesn't matter. No, for the good of the people, they can never be together again.
Sometimes I get the feeling that large corporations are pushing this narrative, and there's really a lot of parallels between that and like the Pluto episode of Rick and Morty. So it's like, oh yeah, no, climate change. No, it's the rain god, the frogs.
I'll tell you, based on the state of my lawn, I'm looking for some frogs to hitch up. We're going to have a full ceremony.
Yeah.
There was a snake right outside my garage.
Wow, that's cool, buddy.
I got one in my basement.
I don't know what kind of snake he was. He had yellow stripes, but I was just like, get out of here, bro.
Was red touch yellow or red touch black?
Yellow.
Red touch yellow,
It
kill a
was
fellow.
yellow and black.
Oh, just yellow and black, no red?
You know what? I didn't get that close. I just hustled him on out of there and went to work. But what if I married him to a frog? What do you think that would result in?
A Disney movie.
A horrific winter that covers all of Kentucky.
Krista, you gasped. You were excited about this when you saw it a few minutes
when we
ago.
were going through the stories a second ago.
Do you have this?
A little bit, and I didn't know what it was called when I was a kid. I think it's I can't pronounce
Apparently
the word.
they made that name up on Reddit.
Yeah, in 2005.
It's like tryptophobia or something like that, where it's like a fear of weird hole patterns. Apple's iPhone 11 Pro triggering fear of holes.
The hole pattern reminds me vaguely of a close-up of an arachnid.
Yeah, a little bit.
There it is.
This doesn't really trigger me.
They're not small. I thought it was supposed to be tiny holes that scared you.
No, it's it's not scare isn't really the right word either. It's just something about it like makes my skin crawl if it's like a weird texture with lots of holes in it.
Really?
Yeah.
What about your pores?
So the reasons they think some people have this is because it's like some sort of instinctual thing of like skin diseases. Like people don't like that.
What about a sponge? Does a sponge get you?
No.
What about pancakes?
When I was a kid, I had a blanket that had equally spaced holes all through it. It was like a knit blanket. And I remember having it hung up over like the canopy of my bed for a while. And I had to take it down because I didn't like looking at the pattern at night.
You know what this could explain? The cheese counter.
No, I was scared of the cheese counter because of the social interaction.
I don't know.
That was genuine fear and anxiety. This is just like a weird uncomfortableness. Someone in the comments will probably know what I'm talking about.
The holes in Swiss are not as intimidating because they're the same color, whereas this looks like arachnid.
It does look like eyes. This one doesn't bother me though. It doesn't trigger it for me.
As a designer, you need these holes. What do you do about it?
I wouldn't do anything about it. It's about what functionally makes sense to get the best image for the camera.
What if people are running in fear from it?
You don't want those people as your customer anyway. You're making Apple even more exclusive.
So you're saying that you have this problem, but screw the people that have this problem, right?
In this case, yeah, because this is what needs to be done to make the camera most efficient. It's controversial, but...
Yeah, I would say that... Now, they do say that some people will go so far as to vomit when faced with this.
Oh, no, I don't understand that. I just feel like I don't like to look at like patterns like that, but it doesn't bother
I don't know
me.
that they understand it either. But it... What? What?
We should Google that
Chat,
in a minute.
weigh in on whether or not holes scare you.
Tryptophobia, Google it, and then I can show you some patterns that I find uncomfortable.
I think tryptophobia would be fear of turkeys.
Is that...
That's
no, I think... I might be saying it wrong. I can't remember it. I can't remember the actual word for it, but it's something like that.
It was in the article.
Yeah, it's... You got it right.
Do I have it right? Okay, I thought I did.
There it is.
Trypophobia.
Oh.
No, I
That's
think
tryptophan.
that's what is in Turkey. That was the joke Wendell made.
Oh. Hang in there, chat.
Yeah, he's really messed it up trying to type it.
Well, it was the stupid autocomplete that got me. Thanks, Google.
Oh yeah, I don't like a lot of these. A lot of these make me very uncomfortable.
So, okay, hornet's nest. Oh, what is this?
Yeah, it's like skin diseases. That's part of the reason like they think some people have this sort of weird phobia.
Is that a finger?
The one with the hand or the foot down there, that one really freaks me out.
Oh.
Like, it doesn't make me like scream or scared or like want to throw up. It just makes me very uncomfortable.
What about honeycomb?
Honeycomb doesn't bother me as much.
It's the
like,
the regular hexagonal structure.
Yeah, something about it is like sort of uncomfortable, and I'm not sure why.
There's a lot of like seed.
Yeah,
look,
seed
the icons
pods
in there.
and yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, some of them are kind of weird. They are uncomfortable, right?
I'm okay with it. Oh, that's cool. You can do it yourself.
Yes, I find that uncomfortable. I'm not scared of it, but I don't like looking at it.
What about this guy?
That's fine.
I want some strawberries.
Oh yeah, what about strawberries? Pomegranates.
That doesn't trigger it for me. It's almost exclusively like skin.
Chat, share your trypophobia triggers.
In the chat, engagement challenge.
All right, we'll see you next week.
All right, bye.